040003, supported source and destinations. The last thing I want to talk about before we actually get into using VMware Converter is the supported source OSs and machines and the supported destination servers. So let's take a look at the different types of virtual machines that VMware can convert first. It can take Workstation 5.x, Workstation 4.x, VMware Player, ESX Server 3.x, 2.x, GSX Server, VMware Server, Virtual Center 2.x, and also down here it can take Microsoft Virtual PC version 7 and later, or any version of Microsoft Virtual Servers, and turn them into the supported destinations that we're going to look at in a second. So that's really nice if you've got a lot of different things set up on a lot of different platforms. Like let's say you tried out Microsoft Virtual Server to get going on by virtualizing some of your environment. Well, now you decided to go with VMware. Well, with VMware Converter, you can take that virtual server and convert it over to VMware platform. Also, one thing that's very, very handy is a lot of times we'll have a VMware product like VMware Server, and we'll have the virtual machines on that, and we may have an ESX server. Well, we can take the virtual machines on VMware Server and convert it to an ESX format virtual machine. And that sounds, pretty simple. You'd think that it would be easy, but before VMware Converter came out, that was a pain. So we're real glad that they made this tool. Another thing I want to mention is that VMware Converter can also take third-party images, things like Symantec Backup Exec System Recovery, formerly Live State, and Norton Ghost 9 or higher. It can take those images and turn them into virtual machines. So that's pretty cool as well. Okay, now let's take a look what we can output to. We can output to VMware Workstation 5.x and 4.x, VMware Player, ESX Server 3.x, 2.5.x, GSX Server, and VMware Server. So we can take any server that was on the previous platforms that we looked at, and we can turn it into any of these files. And finally, let's take a look at the operating systems that are compatible, and this is pretty important. We can only convert 64 or 32-bit Windows XP, Windows Server 2003, Windows 2000, Windows NT, Service Pack 4 Plus. You've got to be careful with this. Normally, you need Service Pack 6A. And another thing that's a little bit of a gotcha, they don't mention much, but your file systems need to be NTFS. That's really the key. So if you've got that, most likely you can convert it. And you're probably wondering what type of hardware VMware Converter supports, and that really gets down to what type of conversions you're going to do. If you're doing a hot clone, that means cloning it while it's running. VMware Converter can pretty much support almost anything, because while it's running, it can get the information from the OS that it needs and translate it into VMware drivers. It doesn't have to take a look at the drivers and then try to figure out what the driver translates to. It can take a look at it. It's got a NIC card. We just need to turn that into a NIC on VMware Server. So it doesn't have to hold all the drivers. If you're doing a cold clone, a completely different idea here. You run into driver issues if you're doing cold clones because in order to pass the image over the network, the cold boot CD has to have that network card driver in order to see the disks. It's got to have the RAID card driver if you've got a RAID card there. So that's why the cold boot CD comes with a tool that lets you add drivers to it. So if you stick with hot cloning, you should be in pretty good shape.